Hello and welcome to the first in our series of adaptive immunity podcasts. This podcast will talk about the third line of defense or adaptive responses, or it's also called adaptive defenses or the adaptive immune system. If you look at the cartoon on the right hand side, at the bottom, you can see where it says adaptive defenses, and then shows you that there are a subcategory. There's two subcategories in adaptive defenses: humoral immunity, and B cells are the cell type that do humoral immunity, and T cells do cellular immunity. So there's 5 distinct attributes to adaptive immunity. The first one is specificity. So B and T cells with their B cell receptors and their T cell receptors recognize only specific molecular shapes called antigens on foreign invaders. That's specificity. The second attribute is inducibility, and that means once a B cell or T cell has been activated with its B cell receptor binding to a pathogen or its T cell receptor binding, then that B or T cell becomes activated. Once it's activated, it can form a clone. So if one B cell recognizes a single pathogen and it binds to that pathogen using its B cell receptor, then it can become induced to form a clone of activated B cells, and now you've got an army of B cells that can go out looking for that specific pathogen. B cells and T cells are also unresponsive to self-antigens, so if you do have antigens on all the cells of your body, but your immune system doesn't recognize those antigens as foreign, so that's why in a healthy person your immune system doesn't attack your cells. And then the final distinct attribute to adaptive immunity is memory. So if you activate a B cell or a T cell, once it forms a clone, there'll be a clone of infantry cells that go out and attack the foreign invader, but there's also a subset of those clones that become memory cells, and if the invader comes back in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, then your immune system can attack the foreign invader immediately, and you don't get sick. So, like I said in the previous slide, the adaptive immunity uses B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes mainly. Well, specifically, the B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes will only recognize certain antigens on foreign invaders. But overall, in general, the lymphocytes are categorized under white blood cells, or WBCs, and the lymphocytes form in the red bone marrow from stem cells in the red bone marrow, and the T lymphocytes will go on to the thymus to mature, and the B lymphocytes will go on to they'll stay in the red bone marrow to become mature. And then in red it says that there are proteins in the plasma membranes of B cells and T cells that recognize the specific pathogens, and those proteins in the plasma membrane are the B cell receptors and the T cell receptors, and they'll recognize mostly protein antigens on foreign invaders. So this just shows you where the B and T cells originate, which I told you was in the red bone marrow. It shows here a femur with the B and T lymphocytes being born there. The T lymphocytes then go on to the thymus, and the B lymphocytes go on to the red bone marrow, where they become adult cells that can go out into the world and fight the foreign invaders. Once the T cells and B cells have undergone rigorous training that makes sure that they won't attack self-antigens, then they go to lymph nodes, where it's said that they seed the lymph nodes. So they live in the lymph nodes. Lymph passes through the lymph nodes, so the B and T cells can basically interrogate anything that gets into the capillary bed. So from the capillary bed, fluid will leak out, and then the lymph system can collect that fluid that leaks out of the capillaries, and the lymph system takes the the fluid to the lymph node where the B and T cells live, and then B and T cells with their B and T cell receptors can look for foreign antigens that will bind their B and T cell receptors. And if they find those foreign antigens, then the B or T cells can form a clone of cells to go out and fight the foreign invader. So this is basically what I said in the previous slide, that the B cells mature in the bone marrow, T cells in the thymus. Adaptive immunity has two subtypes, the humoral immune response, and they call it that because body fluids, I guess back in the Greek times, were called humors, and the humoral response involves the B lymphocytes that make antibodies. Antibodies usually are in the blood, and antibodies are looking for invaders that are outside of cells. So antibodies cannot get into your body cells to look for a foreign invader like a virus. They can only find foreign invaders that are floating around in the body fluids. But T cells can do cell-mediated immunity, so if a virus or another pathogen gets inside one of your body cells, then the T cells can find that foreign invader inside a cell. So it's called cell-mediated immunity. And we talked about in the first slide that B and T cells, once they've formed a clone, they can also form memory cells that will live in your body and fight the pathogen, be able to fight the pathogen instantly when it comes back to the body. And then it talks here in red about autoantigens. So all the cells of your body have antigens in them, but they're self-antigens. So the immune system doesn't recognize self-antigens on your body cells as foreign. So usually a healthy immune system doesn't attack your body cells. But if the immune system recognizes the antigens on your body cells as foreign antigens or non-self antigens, then the immune system will attack your own body cells. And if your immune system recognizes the antigens in your own cells as foreign, then that results in an autoimmune disease or an allergy